Hey, man, look, welcome to the podcast with Soul. I'm up here. I got my man Ian. I just met him. We don't know each other. We just met. Shout out to Alex for suggesting that I come up and reach out to Ian. We just did a full interview on his channel. This one is going to be on my channel. Make sure you follow him on his YouTube, Locked In.
Yeah, just Ian Bick. If you search Ian Bick, it'll be on there.
Search Ian Bick on YouTube and Ian Bick on Instagram. Make sure you guys follow. So, Ian, man, it's interesting when I found out your background, right? Because anytime I run into somebody that's did Fed time, it's almost like an instant connection, right? And I've even heard some guys say, like, your fraternity brothers, you know what I'm saying? Where are you from? Where you from?
I'm from, I was actually born in, a lot of people don't know about this. I was born in Manhattan. I lived there my first few months, Mount Sinai Hospital, and my parents brought us to Danbury, Connecticut. I grew up 5 minutes from here. We're in Richfield, but I call this Danbury because it's like on the border. And we grew up in a gated Jewish community because my dad's side of the family was Jewish. That was his parents' summer home growing up, and they converted it into a 2-story family house right on the lake when I was born.
Okay. Finished high school?
Yeah, graduated high school. I actually had to sue to get my high school diploma because they were screwing with my credits at the end. But yeah, graduated high school, never went to college.
You grew up a 2-parent household?
Yeah, 2 parents, brother, dog, family vacations, the whole shebang.
Okay. What was your childhood like?
It was good, it was a good childhood. Aside from being like bullied a lot for being chubby and stuff in school, I was the least athletic, always picked last on the sports teams. But otherwise, it was a good childhood. Nothing went wrong, like compared to some of the stories we hear and we encounter. Nothing went wrong in that sense.
All right. So now I just read a little bit of your bio on that one sheet that you got hanging up out there on the wall. You got a strong entrepreneurial background. And it seems like you started doing entrepreneurial stuff at the age of 18 or something like that?
I started even younger. I was selling candy out of my backpack and energy drinks and gum and chocolate bars in middle school. And I was working for my dad around that time, too. He owns a catering company. And I always did lemonade stands and hustled. When I wanted the new Xbox or the new Wii or whatever came out, I always hustled for that. Nothing ever got, handed to me in that regard. I was always just an entrepreneurial kid. I hated the business aspect of it, like taxes and bookkeeping and all of that. But
the hustling side, that was you.
I love the hustle, yeah. I love the art of the hustle.
How old are you now?
29.
29, okay. So what kind of student were you in school?
Middle school, terrible. Like all D's and F's.
Why?
Because the school would tell kids, you had to do well in middle school to get into a good college. And I thought that was all kind of bullshit, But when I got to high school, freshman year, I was put on a naughty list of kids to watch out for. So I wanted to be in their face and prove them wrong. So I was on the top of my class. I was top 8 by the end of freshman year. And then sophomore year, I got into all AP classes, honor roll classes, and everything like that. And I took school very seriously because I wanted to go to college and join the FBI.
Yo, he ought to join the FBI. Just sit and chill. Just listen. So where'd you go to college?
I didn't. Never went to college. I went to federal prison at 21. That was my college. While all my friends were in their first year of college, I was, being indicted by the FBI at 19.
So you graduated at 18?
Yeah, at end of, or beginning of 18. So May 2013, I turned 18. I technically graduated a semester early, but didn't get my diploma. They didn't let me walk at graduation till later that summer. After I had sued, got into a summer school for 2 weeks, and then got the diploma.
All right. So what did you do? What were you doing right after you finished school but didn't get your degree? You had to sue and all that shit. What were you doing?
I had an entertainment business. I was doing concerts with large-scale acts like Tyga, Big Sean, Chief Keef, Kid Ink, acts like that. That was my business.
You
That
was
was my
bringing them here to
passion.
Connecticut?
Yeah, Connecticut and Rhode Island and Massachusetts. My first show I ever booked was Big Sean in Danbury, 15 minutes away from here at the college. That was my passion. That's why I think I'm good at what I do now, because it's the same thing, but virtually. You're putting on shows. You're entertaining people. You're just not risking $100,000 to do it anymore.
Were you successful at that?
In the beginning, I started off very successful. In high school, I had a party promotion business, and I would make $10,000 a night as a teenager. But then when I got in over my head with these big acts and way out of my depth and getting taken advantage of by agents and the shadiness of the music industry, and taking on investors and kind of got lazy, that's when I lost everything. And that's kind of how like the whole federal case got started.
All right, so you went to the feds.
Yeah, I did. 21, my bond got revoked, didn't get to self-surrender. I was going out of state to Yonkers Raceway in New York to gamble.
On the horses?
No, just on the machines, because in Connecticut, you got to be 21 and older to gamble. So I wasn't 21 yet. I was a few months shy of 21, so I'd go to Yonkers and gamble, and that's a violation of my bond to go out of state. So I got caught. Bond revoked, sent to detention. A month later, I got sentenced to 3 years.
Now, what was your initial charge?
It was 15 federal counts, 11 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of making a false statement to federal law enforcers.
All right. What brought on those charges? What were you doing?
So essentially, I put together all these concerts. I raised money.
How much?
About $600,000 from friends and family. But the problem was I promised them their money back. I guaranteed them their money back. And I was also promising, because multiple time periods are kind of happening at this point, and I promised them a set rate of return on their investment. So say you loaned me $100,000, I'd give you $150,000 back in 30 days. And
50% return.
Yeah, because we were selling also, in addition to these concerts, me and my friend were doing electronics, like Beats by Dre and whatnot. And he was getting them for $50, and you could sell them for $400. They would later turn out to be fake. So I didn't know that at the time. That's why I promised people these loans back or investments. I put the money into concerts, electronics, a couple different other ventures, and a nightclub that I purchased. Everything lost money, and I lied to cover up those losses. I wasn't honest with them. Had I been honest and said, hey, I fucked up, I lost your money, nothing would ever happen. Me and you wouldn't have been sitting here right now. But because I lied, the thing about lying and money is once you tell one lie, you keep telling more and more and more. It's a domino effect until it kind of all comes crashing down.
So the people that loaned you the money called the feds on you?
One of the kids, he was like 18, went into the Danbury Police Department, the local police, and said he was owed X amount of dollars. The police start investigating. The parents never went to the cops. The cops went to the parents after the kids started to share that they lost money. Long story short, the state's attorney declines to prosecute. Someone had some juice on the federal level, got a kick to the United States Postal Service and the Banking Commission of Connecticut. Then they kicked it up to the FBI and the IRS. There was multiple task force on this case.
Describe for me and tell me that day where you were when the feds came and introduced themselves to you.
So the very first time I got introduced to federal law enforcement officers,
as it relates to this case.
Yeah, the very first time was 2014, April, and I'm 19 years old, 18 still, not even 19 yet. And I go to a hearing in front of the Department of Banking, and I go there without a lawyer, and I'm trying to just clear my name. And then after like a 5-hour hearing, they say, hey, there's 2 gentlemen here waiting for you to talk to you. And I got up, go into this room. They have me waiting there like a half hour, and these 2 guys walk in with the cheap suits, like classic movie type stuff. And they show me their badges, and it says postal inspectors on it. And I'm like, what's a postal inspector? I didn't know we had postal inspectors. They sit down, they ask me questions, and when I'm doing this interview with them, I have no idea they listened to the whole 5-hour interview I just gave with the Department of Banking. So they were asking very targeted questions. And then at the end of that meeting, they gave me target letters saying, USA versus Ian Bick, you're under investigation by the FBI, IRS, blah, 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 organizations of the United States government. That was the very first time I was made aware I was under investigation by the feds. And right after that meeting is when, like in your case, I looked up a criminal defense attorney for federal cases. And that's when the case started on the federal level.
Now, this 5-hour investigation or this 5-hour hearing, they contacted you by mail saying, Ian, you need to come down here on such and such day, or did somebody come and say, yo, you need to be down here on such and such day?
No, it was the mail. As far as I thought, the state case was dead, that it wasn't going anywhere. I hadn't heard anything in months. I had went to a meeting with the state detectives months prior, and they were like fishing. They didn't have the bank records yet. They thought I spent all the money at like Disney World or something stupid,
Because you were young.
Because I was young. And I had an attorney at the time, like a local civil family attorney, who was like, there's no case here. This isn't criminal. This is kids that did something stupid. But, that's why I went into that. So I got that subpoena to the Department of Banking, and I really should have just went with a lawyer to squash that, and I probably never would have been arrested because I gave them everything on a silver platter. I connected all the dots for them in that one hearing. Names, records, everything that put the whole case together.
So these two dudes, you finish talking to them, then what happens?
I lawyer up. I had a federal attorney who was known in the city, had a relationship with the federal prosecutors. He sets up a reverse proffer where you sit down with them. And
this is the Southern District of Manhattan?
No, this is Connecticut.
Okay.
So there's just one district court of Connecticut. The FBI's office is in New Haven and the prosecutor's office.
Okay.
And I go and sit down with them, and a reverse proffer is where regular proffer is when you kind of give up what information you have. A reverse proffer is where they're giving up what information they have on you to kind of talk and make a deal. So I'm sitting there with my dad, my attorney, and myself, and around this huge conference room table is the FBI, the IRS, postal inspectors, 2 U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys, interns, law clerks, everyone's there, and they're pretty much laying out the whole case. And then this is July 2014. I'm 19 now. By January 2015 is when they indicted me.
On 15 counts of wire fraud?
Wire fraud, money laundering, making a false statement.
Okay, so you get indicted. Do they come arrest you?
Yep, they do the whole
Where
show.
were you?
I was in my parents' house right down the road.
You knew they were coming?
No, so they had told my attorney that I could turn myself in once the indictment came down, and they didn't keep their word, and they stormed the house at 6 a.m. Guns drawn, cars lined all up and down the road. It was a whole scene.
And took you away
Dragged me out of the house in handcuffs.
in pajamas.
Yeah, they made me wear cowboy boots because they didn't have laces on. Because I was in the school plays in high school, so I had cowboy boots in my closet.
And where'd they take you?
It was a snowstorm that day, and we were supposed to go to Bridgeport, which is closer to the house, and then the judge couldn't make it, so we went to New Haven. Brought me down, fingerprinted, mug shots, the whole shebang, and I had my bond hearing a couple hours later. My lawyer met me downstairs in the holding cell, and I got released on bond a few hours later. It was pretty quick. It was like a Monday or Tuesday, I think. I didn't have to spend the night or anything like that.
Did you have ankle monitor, or did they say you couldn't leave you couldn't leave the state, or you had to, you know what I'm saying?
Just that I couldn't leave the state. And there was heavy drug testing, which made no sense because it wasn't a drug case and I had no drug history. So like 3 days a week, you'd have to call a number to report for Quest Diagnostics or whatever to get drug tested. It was kind of crazy.
All right. So then how long? So from that day, you went to trial.
I went to trial. It was almost a month long that November. Trial was scheduled for September. It got pushed to October, then November, and the trial was almost 30 days long.
What was the plea they offered you before you went to trial?
Longer than what I got after trial. It was like 4 or 5 years. It was something crazy.
And you was like, nah, fuck that.
I wanted to plead guilty to no jail time. Keep in mind, I'm 19. The crimes that they said happened were when I was 17 and 18 years old. And I admitted I owed the money. Like, we lost money. We screwed up. But did it deserve prison time? As a first-time offender, no criminal record? That's all they cared about. The feds only want prison time. Why'd I have to go to prison? I would have pled guilty right then and there, but instead they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars prosecuting the case.
So you go to trial and you lose.
Yeah, I won about half of the charges, and then some were a mistrial, and they only convicted on a few. But the thing with the feds is all they need is one.
People got on the stand and pointed at you?
It was like a high school reunion. I think there was like 200 witnesses on the sheet. Probably like almost 75 testified between both sides. It was long. It was a really long trial. I testified. I was on the stand for 2 days.
And you saw people come and say, yeah, Ian did this.
They never look at you. They never look at you, point. They can't. My business partner, who was my best friend, who took a plea deal at the 11th hour to get a probation charge on his record in state, he couldn't even look at me, you know? He's a scumbag for what he did. He that was someone that was equally as involved, and he copped out because he couldn't take the heat.
You talked to him to today?
I talked to him once after like the HBO documentary came out, and I called him when I was in prison, but I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. I think success is the best revenge. Like, I look at those people that made such a big stink out of all this. Because of this, look what came of it, you know?
Look at who you are now.
Yeah, I wouldn't be that person now. I wouldn't have the life. I'd be working a regular job somewhere, you know, if it wasn't for them. They were so hard and deadlocked on sending me to prison. And it's also half the feds' fault because they tell these individuals, hey, you'll get your money back if you testify and you do this and you do that, which is all a lie. Unless there's like assets, but there was no assets. The money was all lost. I didn't have assets, you know?
You lose trial. You get sentenced that day?
No, back on bond. And then it was
home confinement. You can't leave the crib?
No, nothing.
You can't leave?
No, I was free.
Okay.
Just no leaving the state. That's
okay.
how I violated.
Okay.
I got sentenced 11 months later, end of November, end of October 2016. The anniversary was yesterday. What
was your sentence?
The judge gave me 3 years. So my guidelines were 8 to 12.
8 to 12 years?
Yeah, the guidelines, the PSI. The government wanted 7 to 8 or 6 to 8. We asked for probation, time served, house arrest, so the judge met in the middle and gave me 3 years, 1 year house arrest, and 3 year supervised release.
Did you cooperate?
No, I went to trial. There's no way to cooperate.
So you go back for sentencing in New Haven?
Yeah, so my bond got revoked like 20 days earlier because they found out I was going out of state. One of the guys that worked at the club, because during this time I owned a music venue in Connecticut, booking big electronic DJs. And bond got revoked. My last show was actually with 21 Savage. I don't know if you know who that is. Yeah. Bond got revoked. I go to a detention center in Rhode Island, Wyatt, and then got hauled to sentencing, and that's when it happened.
Who told him you was going out of state?
A couple of the guys that were working with me at the club wanted to take away the club from me. So they knew I was getting sentenced. And honestly, if that never happened, I probably would have got house arrest or probation. So they did me a favor technically because I built my platform off of prison stories. Like the dynamic I have now is I think it only works because I went to prison and I can relate with the guests. If I had just gotten a plea deal and never went to prison, I don't think it would work the same way because I wouldn't share that with someone.
No.
Like I was talking to an ex-leader of the Latin Kings earlier. He felt comfortable with talking to me because I've been in his shoes before, not because I'm some white kid from the suburbs, you know, that grew up in a decent family. So even though I had a good upbringing, I still felt their struggle that they've shared, like you and a lot of these guys have shared at one point in their life. We all share a similar common denominator.
Right, and that's why I was saying that this really like fraternity brothers, man, because, all I got to do is to you or anybody that's been to the feds to say 4 o'clock count, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Or squat and cough.
Squat and chicken day.
Shebang's chips.
Right.
You like those? I got some upstairs.
No. So you get sentenced and they take you right away, or you have to self-surrender?
No, my bond was revoked.
It was revoked.
Yeah, so I go back to the detention center. 2 weeks later, they transport me to Brooklyn, MDC Brooklyn.
How long you stayed in there?
Like a month waiting. And then
How was that?
Terrible. I thought that was what prison was going to be like. See, that's what you see on TV, those detention centers. The locked doors, you're in the cell, the pods, the tiers. Yeah.
Right.
That's what you think it's going to be like. And you're like, oh my God, I got to do 3 years of this? But then when you get to a low security prison or a camp or any type, even the penitentiaries are different than what TV describes, you know? It's a whole different ballgame.
Right.
I was at Fort Dix in New Jersey. That shit looked like a college campus.
Right.
Like with all the buildings and everything. There was cats running around.
Manicured grass and
everything. Guys working. And then when I got to the camp, that was a whole different ballgame.
So your first stop was Fort Dix?
Yep, a low security federal prison. My points, so to get to a camp, you need 11 or less. They put me at a 12 because they said I didn't graduate high school. Someone screwed up on the paperwork. So I was put to a low. And also because of my age, I was under 26. That racks up your points. But the biggest thing was the high school. So they had me in GED classes like on the second week I got there. And you get a disciplinary action if you don't go. So I was trying to fight that for like the first 2 months I was there.
How long you stayed at Fort Dix?
About 7 months, got caught on a cell phone. And then they shipped me. I was in the SHU. I left Fort Dix.
How long you stayed in the SHU?
I was in that SHU for like 2 months. Then they sent me to Philly. First they sent me to Brooklyn. Then they sent me to Philly. And the
What's the spot in Philly?
The detention center, FDC.
So they shot you from Fort Dix back to MDC Brooklyn?
And then back to Philly. They said I was designated to Danbury, which is my hometown. But they were screwing with me because they bring me to Philly. They put me through diesel therapy.
Is there a federal prison here in Danbury?
Yeah, there is. That's a famous one. Orange is the New Black. It's based on. It's a woman's low, a woman's camp, and a men's low.
Okay.
2 minutes from my house.
Did your lawyer request that you get here?
He requested I go to Otisville, the camp.
In New York.
But they never sent me to a camp to begin with.
No, there's a medium in Otisville too, ain't it?
Yeah, but my points were too low for that.
All right, so you go to Brooklyn, then you down to Philly.
Yep, and then from Philly, I'm in the SHU for another 2 months because the hurricane hits.
So from Brooklyn, you was in the SHU in Brooklyn, MDC this time too?
No, that's the crazy part. So in Brooklyn, I'm free to walk around.
And then when they shoot you to Philly, they put you directly in the SHU.
Yeah, because they're saying that I my last spot I was at, when you go from place to place, if you come from the SHU, you stay in the SHU.
Right.
But I was like in Brooklyn, I wasn't in the SHU. So I'm now in Philly, and the FBI had just arrested a ring of sex offenders at Fort Dix for operating a child pornography ring in the library on iPads. They put me in the cell with one of the guys that was busted in that.
For y'all that don't know what the SHU is segregated housing unit. It's the whole. That's what it is. So they got you in the cell with this pedophile?
Yeah, and then also in that SHU at the time was the DA of Philly who had just gotten federally indicted. He was in the SHU too. And then a bunch of other pedophiles. Yeah, it was crazy. So I'm there for 2 months because the hurricane hits in Puerto Rico. So all the buses and everything are helping in Puerto Rico or whatever they were doing, flying inmates back, this and that. 2 months there. I go back to Brooklyn. I'm there for like a week. Not in the SHU now in Brooklyn. And then I finally make it to Danbury. I'm on the yard for not even 24 hours. I get there in the morning, get out quick because Danbury is a small spot, like 1,500 inmates or whatever. I'm walking the yard. I link up with the Italians. Everything's good. They call me to the lieutenant's office, like at 6 o'clock that day.
In the evening?
In the evening, yeah. They ask for my ID. I show them my ID. Then they turn me around, handcuff me, and bring me to the SHU. And that SHU in Danbury is like Alcatraz. They got the old bars and whole tiers, 3 tiers high, crazy. I find out it's because I dated one of the guards' cousins. He reported a conflict of interest because one of the guards, he was like a super cop over there. He used to come to my house for barbecues like 2 years prior when I was dating his cousin. And he reported it. They had to remove me from the compound. So I was in the SHU there for like another 3 months waiting to get designated and transferred out.
Where'd you go after that?
They bring me, they say my points are now camp level because this is now almost a little over a year into my sentence. I go from there to a New York airstrip where I thought I was going to Otisville. The buses go to Otisville. Instead, they put me on Con Air. I go from there to Oklahoma City. I spend one night in I spent 3 weeks in Oklahoma City. Go back on the plane. This is now going into 2018 now. Go back on the plane and
handcuffed and shackled.
Handcuffed, shackled. Terrible experience. And the plane pulls right up to that terminal. It's like a holding cell. And then from there, I go to Chicago, the MDC in Chicago. I'm there for 3 weeks. And then from there, I'm on like a 6-hour bus ride to Wisconsin, where I spent the last year of my sentence at Oxford, Wisconsin prison camp.
Interesting. As a white kid, white Jewish kid, when you get to prison, federal prison, it's mostly niggas in there, mostly brothers in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that your first time, your first experience being a minority in that respect? And how did that impact you?
I don't really think so. I mean, and Danbury High School is one of the largest in the state, and it's very mixed. You have Spanish, you have Black. I grew up with Black friends and Spanish friends, so that wasn't the problem that I had a hard time adjusting to. In there, the problem became less race and more identity of they all thought I was a chomo. So all the Black guys and the Spanish guys and the higher up white guys.
So a chomo, y'all, is a child molester.
Yeah.
That's something that you do not want to be in the feds. You do not want to be. They get extorted. They get beat. It's not good.
So they thought I was a chomo because of my glasses, and I was a white young kid. And when I said I was there for fraud, and there's barely any 21-year-old guys in there for fraud in the federal system. They didn't believe me. And I didn't know anything about paperwork or anything like that.
You didn't have your paperwork with you?
Not yet. I didn't know anything about it.
They probably had the cell phone. They probably looked you up.
A couple days later, after there was a whole big stink about it, they could have just looked me up and realized I was legit, you know? But no one approached me and said, hey, who do you run with? Care package, anything. Like when I got off the bus, the Blacks are taken care of by the other Blacks. The Spanish are taken care of by the Spanish. The white guys are not approached, you know, because the other white guys don't want to be seen as the ones accidentally associating
with a chomo.
So when I go to that room coming off the bus and everyone's getting care packages with flip-flops and shit, I don't get anything. No one comes up to me. I'm sitting there showering with my jumpsuit or in khakis on the floor so I don't put my bare feet on the shower, you know, because I didn't hit commissary yet and they don't give you flip-flops. So to me, that was the difference, you know?
Now, you said a big stink was made about you?
Yeah, so what happened was I go and sit down at a table and the Black guys...
At Mainline?
Yeah, and the other white
breakfast
guys...
breakfast or lunch?
This was dinner. This is the first day I got there because I made it to the first dinner after the 4 p.m. count. They counted us in R&D, and then we got released for dinner, and I go and sit down at a table. And
the wrong table?
Well, it was the right table if they thought my paperwork was good, but because they thought I was a chomo, they made me sit with the other chomos.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, they said, you can't sit here. You got to get off the table. And they were going to fight me if I didn't. And this is like my second month in prison. All I wanted to do was stay out of trouble, you know?
Your second month? What do you mean your second month?
This is like my second month because I was in the detention centers. There's no politics in there. Everyone's on the same playing field.
So when you're going to Philly and MDC and
Brooklyn and Wyatt, yeah, those are detention centers. Everyone's fighting their case. There's no politics.
Right.
But when I got to the yard and there's politics because everyone's sentenced and doing their time, they thought I was a chomo.
This is in Wisconsin?
No, this is at Fort Dix in New Jersey.
This is at Fort Dix.
That's my first real spot. And that's when...
Fort Dix is they get busy in Fort Dix.
Yeah, it's like a whole compound. There's 5,000 inmates, 2 sides. And then like a couple weeks later, people would start to come up to me, but my car never approached me. Like the Connecticut car never came up to me and hooked me up. No one took care of me. So when I say there became a big stink, what happened was like a few weeks later or a couple months later, I bought a cell phone. I'm moving around. I'm a white young kid with a cell phone who everyone thinks is a chomo. Guys that had worked their way down from the penitentiary or the medium come from Baltimore, D.C., guys that have done time, and those prisons, that's not allowed if a white kid's running solo, moving around with a phone, and I'm not running with anyone.
Yeah, you could be thought of as a 5-0, as a cop.
So they thought I was a chomo still, because no one had ever really taken the time to check my paperwork, and they tried to extort me. And then it became like a whole thing between the New York car and the Connecticut car, because the New York car, because I was friends with some of the guys there, was like to the head of the Connecticut car, why did you guys never check his paperwork? Why didn't you take care of him? Why didn't you hook him up? You know?
These black dudes or white dudes?
Black dudes from D.C., the booty bandits, they call them.
So the niggas from D.C., the black niggas from D.C. is stepping to you about you got a phone, you a white boy with a phone, and you a chomo.
They want me to pay them for protection.
How much?
They wanted something crazy, like $1,200 a month on their books.
Who approached you? How many niggas approached you?
2. These were guys that had literally never been to a low before, but Obama had given a lot of clemency.
These niggas out of the USPs.
Yeah, that had automatically, like overnight, like they skipped the medium, you know, pass go, you're
Straight to
here,
the low.
Straight to the low. That's a whole new world. So they're moving around.
They stepped to you together?
Yeah, the both of them. They arrived off the bus together. There's a group of them. These guys would later get set up by their own people because they were causing too much heat to the system. They were going around extorting everyone. You can't do that at a low. You know, the chomos are safe in a low.
So how did they step to you? They had knives, or did they what they do?
They yanked me in the bathroom one day, pulled me up against the wall, slapped the glasses off my face. One of them had a steel rod, because these guys that come from higher places, you know, those are the guys bring their boots to the shower, always carrying a steel rod, even though you don't need that in a low, you know. And they just said, here's my information, have your people put money on my books and we'll protect you. And I'm like, I don't need protection. I'm good. And that's when they got pissed off. So then after that, I start making friends with some of the higher ups in the New York car.
Niggas.
Yeah, you know, good guys.
Black dudes.
Black guys, yeah. There were some white guys, Spanish guys. It's not race-based, at least not
right,
at Fort
it's New
Dix.
York. If you from New
Yeah, there were Spanish, Chinese, black, and
all from New York.
All from New York. Guys that have been in the system for years, you know? And I just befriended them, and they were fucked up money-wise, so I put some money on their books. Or not because they made me, but I looked out, hey, you need anything at commissary? I got you covered. And pretty soon it became known that, like, if these guys fucked with me, they would be fucking with these other guys' hustle, because I was looked at in a way as their bitch, kind of, you know? Even though I wasn't, because I wasn't really being extorted. So they backed off, and then they bothered some other, you know, people and caused heat, so someone threw a phone on their bed one day, and they got them out of there quick.
Threw a phone on the DC niggas' beds that had yanked you into the bathroom.
Yeah, because they were causing a lot of movement. They were trying to extort everyone. At a low, it doesn't go down like that, you know? A low's a sweet spot. You got to adhere to the economy.
Because niggas is going home from there. People trying to go home from the low.
And people are making money. So if you have guys that are causing heat, violence, that's the biggest thing. They're bringing violence to the table. Hustle all you want, but don't go trying to stab people and bring violence. You're going to get out of there. That's what brings heat.
All right, so now these niggas from DC step to you. They trying to extort you for $1,200 a month. Do you ever get to a point to where people look at your paperwork and be like, "Yo, this nigga's not a chomo. He," you know what I'm saying?
About after this incident happened, the New York guys are like to the Connecticut guys, why'd you never check this dude's paperwork? He's good. Like, if you just Googled me, you could have saw I went to trial, you know, and that everything was straight. So no one bothered me really after that. I was good. And when you're in the detention centers and there's no paperwork, people find out from the guards and stuff. Like at the detention center, Oklahoma City, you have all those Spanish guys waiting to go to Texas who have covered in face tats. If you're a chomo, they're going to stab you up real quick, even at those detention centers. So guards would pass wind of them. I'm straight. Like, no guard had ever screwed me over in that sense. But no one asked the guards to begin with when I got to Fort Dix.
So you get straight, you chilling on all this happened at Fort Dix?
Yeah, all my problems, really.
And how long you stayed at Fort Dix?
7, 8 months.
were you moving around the compound freely after all of this? Or was you just like, man, I'm just going to chill? Did y'all have bunks or did y'all have cells? Or?
So it's an old army barracks. So there's like 10 buildings on each side. You're only locked in that building during, in between moves or whatever. Otherwise,
it was 10-minute move.
Yeah, 10-minute move. You're free to roam around in the building. The CO's downstairs. There's 3 stories, 2 bathrooms on each story. TV room downstairs, pool room, workout room. And the bunks are 12-man rooms, 6 bunks, table, chairs. It's sweet, it's a good spot.
So you moving around, you going outside, or you going to rec, you doing everything that you want to do?
Yeah, I was gambling, I was playing dice, had a phone, I was moving around. For a white kid that was not running with a car, that's what really caused a lot of my problems.
Niggas was looking like, why this nigga ain't why he's not with nobody? You was dolo.
They always thought that was the sketchy part. That's why guys would try me. I wasn't with anyone. I was doing whatever I wanted to do.
Okay. Any fights?
No, I never got into fights. I got kind of half jumped one day by the head of the New York car. They pulled me in the bathroom. They didn't lay hands. They grabbed my shirt, ripped it open. They were just trying to scare me. He didn't like that I had some high members of the New York car looking out for me when the Connecticut car didn't even. It was a political thing. He was trying to show because the Connecticut car called him out for whatever, he was just trying to pull a power move, but that was as far as it went. I never fist fought anyone.
Who was the deepest car in Dick's when you was there?
New York runs the compound. New York, New Jersey, those are the biggest. But New York outnumbers New Jersey. Connecticut's a part of New England, like Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, but they're the minority. New York's the biggest.
All right, so, wow, this is deep. Hell of a story, man. This is deep, man. What impact did federal prison have on your life? The Ian Bick before federal prison, and then the Ian Bick during federal prison. Does Ian make any changes? And then the Ian Bick that emerges from prison. Take me through that. Take us through that.
I mean, I think that prison in itself didn't really necessarily do anything. I came out of prison, aside from losing a ton of weight and getting fit, prison itself didn't do anything for me to rehabilitate me. I think it just, I came out wanting to get back in the nightclub business, the entertainment business. I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to do all that. I think the real change came when, years later after I worked a normal job and everything, and I really reflected on everything as a whole. You learn about patience, and you learn about yourself, and you see the process for what it was. I think that's what changed me the most. I was definitely very cocky and arrogant going into prison, and even coming out, I still felt like I was hot shit. But even I think now I'm more humble than ever, and I have more fame and wealth now than I ever did before. I mean, I owned a club before, and I was booking all these big acts, but I still live with my parents. I couldn't pay my own bills. Getting out of prison, 3 years I worked from the bottom of Whole Foods, working the hot bar, to rising to a team leader in prepared foods. I was going to make over $100K before I quit to do this. That was the process. That was what changed my life. Literally rebuilding my life from nothing. When I got out, I had zero. And just rebuilding it, getting all the pieces, that was a very humbling experience. So I put in all that work. It's not like I got handed a platform overnight. I built it. Every follower, everything. It was a grind. And I think that process is what changed my life.
You finished up in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I flew out of there to Connecticut. They put me on a plane.
The feds put you on a plane?
Yeah, they paid for a plane, gave me $30.
Talk about that day. Going to R&D, they driving you to the airport, you getting on a plane and flying to Connecticut, and you getting off the plane here in Connecticut.
I mean, it was surreal. It doesn't feel real. I couldn't sleep the night before. The camp driver, Another inmate is what brings you. He smuggled out my phone for me in case I got searched at R&D, which I didn't end up getting searched. It doesn't feel real, and honestly, you don't feel free until you're off probation because they can bring you back at any moment. You know.
How much paper you have?
3 years. Did every day of those 3 years. Avoided a couple violations. Stupid shit like opening up credit cards. Like, there's silly stuff. How are you supposed to rebuild your life, you know? I got lucky. COVID helped. Kind of threw me under the radar. But, yeah, the halfway house is stricter than prison. There's all these things. You're not really free. The halfway house is a scam. They're profiting off of that. They should let you go straight from prison with your good time to probation. No halfway house.
I denied my I didn't want to go to the halfway house because I had heard so many niggas, man, say they go to the halfway house and the slightest infraction, they violating you, sending you back, and it's even more strict and more restrictive than prison.
If I had to do it all again, I would say no halfway house.
Yeah, I did all my time at Morgantown. I didn't want it.
Yeah, it's not worth it, man.
Yeah. All right, so you get out the joint, and what do?
I wanted to get back in the nightclub business. That
you
wasn't
had money
possible.
Or no?
No, nothing. No money.
Your moms and pops wasn't really, they weren't
Well, yeah, they were supporting me. I lived with them. And then 4 or 5 months later, I got a job at Whole Foods and $15 an hour on the ankle monitor. And I worked my way up for 3 years. Got a car, paid for my own car insurance, health insurance, got good credit. Got my own apartment, got a girlfriend, got a dog, everything. Rebuilt my life better than it ever was before.
Did prison help Ian Bick become more independent and more self-sufficient and self-reliant? Because you're saying that you did these things, the Whole Foods job, the apartment. Did that experience in prison where, like, you're on your own when you're in prison? Nobody's coming to help you. There's nobody. Did that experience help you say, like, nah, Mom, nah, I'm cool. I got it. I could do it?
No, I don't think so because I owned a club and I was on my own before too. And even in prison, you have people, you're more kind of dependent on people in a way too because people send you money and this and that. You're not really earning that type of, you can earn, but I wasn't really. I think that process of rebuilding after prison, not getting people's help, and also time. If prison gave me one thing, it was time. Because I was in so much bullshit before, 3 years gives you a lot of time to separate yourself from that bullshit and gives you a fresh start. Time heals everything. So I got into that and, you know, it separated me from all the nonsense.
You resign from Whole Foods and you get into the social media space. Talk about that.
I started making TikToks just on my phone in my car. My friend convinced me to do it. And
talking about what?
They started off with nightclub stories, and then my first video I ever talked about prison being in solitary went viral. Did like 1.5 million views overnight. And that's when I knew I had to double down on prison stories. So I would sit in my car 3-4 times a day, not really making any money. TikTok wasn't paying me at that time. Facebook was paying me a little bit. I wasn't on YouTube except for YouTube Shorts had just opened up. I didn't post any full lengths because I knew I wanted to save that for when I was ready. And I just sat there and told my story 3 to 5 times a day in my car. Prison stories, how I got extorted, this and that, anything, you know? And because I was a young white kid with glasses and whatnot, people were interested in what I had to say.
Now, what about the Jewish thing? Did you run any problems with the Jewish thing in there?
No, and a lot of the Jewish people in there are chomos. There are a lot of chomo Jewish people that are kind of protected because they're Jewish or they're chomo, but they have pull in a sense. Like this one Jewish kid I was with in the shoe in Danbury, he was the contraband smuggler. He got cell phones and food in through the rabbi into the prison, but he was a chomo. So all these guys are doing business with him and accepting him because of his power and money. Not because of, you know, anything else.
Yeah, because if he wasn't doing that, he'd have some real problems.
Exactly. So the Jewish guys kind of ran the Danbury prison. They have a pull. If you are Jewish in prison, you are way better off.
What you mean? Expound on it. Add some color to that.
I mean, you're connected with the rabbis. Like if you have a rabbi that is willing to get you, they could get you designated in certain prisons. They have a lot of connections. There's a lot of power in that.
Within the Department of Justice.
Exactly. Yeah.
there was some Jewish dudes in Morgantown, because on the Morgantown compound, FCI Morgantown, West Virginia, there was a chapel. And in that chapel, on the weekends, the Nation of Islam dudes would go in there. And then the Jewish guys would go in there. The Christians would go in there and do their thing. And so I was in there with I seen some Jewish dudes in there. I don't know if they was chomos or not. I don't know. But anyway. So your social media thing starts to flourish. And right now you got over 200, almost 300,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Yep.
60,000 on Instagram. How many on TikTok?
Almost 900,000.
900,000 on TikTok.
And then we have about 1 million listeners on Spotify and Apple a month.
Okay. All from just
talking about prison, man. Just telling the prison stories. But now it's not even about me, it's about other people. I always say the best episodes are where I barely have to talk. Just a guest telling their story, because it's a new face every time. You could tell the same story about prison because a lot of the stories are the same, but each person tells it in a different way, from a different viewpoint, from a different color of their skin, from a different religion, from everything. But they're saying essentially the same story, but it makes it different and interesting because it could attract or relate to someone else because of who that person is as an individual.
And so now this is all you do. You just do your social media thing.
Yeah, I do 5 episodes a week now. I do all my own editing, social media posting, filming. I have a program now where I'm mentoring juveniles affected by the probation or the criminal justice system, get together weekly, have food together. They come to the studio, they hang out, play video games, kind of see, what can come from their situations. That's how I kind of give back my time, help people if they want to use the studio. Like that come on my show, they want to get into podcasting and stuff. Like no one showed me how to do any of this. I had to learn that on my own. And the people that want to show you, they want to charge you. And I have guys that'll be like, hey, how much do I have to pay for you to teach me? That's free. Knowledge is free, You just have to go and look at it and want to learn. I'm not going to hand you everything on a silver platter, but I'll give you the tools you need to succeed.
Dope, Ian. Let me ask you this one last question, man. Is Ian's life already written by a supreme being in higher power and there's nothing that he can do to change his fate? Or is Ian's life determined by his choices and decision-making?
I think before prison, I was always spiritual. I love quotes and, just that atmosphere, the success quotes and all that typical stuff. But when I went to prison, I think I really started to believe in God and purpose and the universe. And to answer your question, I think that everything happened the way it was supposed to happen and for an exact reason. And it put me on this journey because what I've learned in life is that the things that are meant for you and that are designed for you are going to work out. And all of this has kind of worked out and flowed. And granted, I had to make a lot of choices and did a lot of work, but it led me to this exact point. And that's all because everything happened the way it did, which were somewhat stemmed from my choices, but ultimately other choices were being made from a higher power or a universe. So I don't think I would be here, in this seat doing what I do now if there was no God or there was no universe or there was no plan. So I think my purpose in life is to give people an opportunity to share their platform and and their story. And we were talking about this on my show. When you get arrested by any type of government, they send out the articles and it's very one-sided. And they'll say the worst. They'll make you to be the worst, which, okay, we get it. That's what they do. But when you get out, there's no redemption article unless you're a celebrity. There's no, hey, so-and-so did this, this, and this to turn their life around. The local newspaper in Danbury shredded me apart for years, and I had to beg them to do a follow-up article and apply pressure for them to just do a follow-up article. But do you know how many people that doesn't happen to?
Right.
So my purpose
You're looking
in
at
life,
one of them.
Yeah, my purpose in life is to give those people an opportunity to share their story where my video with them on YouTube, which will live there forever, that'll trump anything that was ever written about them years later or years earlier. Like when you search any of these guest names, my video of them comes up first, not the articles that were written negatively about them from their past life. So I think that's what my purpose is. That's the power of the platform, and that's why it does well.
My man. Hey, Ian, man, you got a dope story, man.
Thank you, brother.
And I'm glad that one of my subscribers emailed me and said, yo, Sean, email this dude and see if you can get on his show, on his podcast. And I hit you, and I think within about an hour or two, you had hit me back. And when I saw you did federal prison time, I said, well, you know, I know this guy. I had never met you a day in my life. But like I say, there's a bond. You a white Jewish kid from Connecticut. I'm a foundational Black American from North Jersey. But, you know, when we start talking about, you know, khaki suits and 4 o'clock count and shakedown and census count, you know, chicken day on Thursday, only people that have been there and that experience know what that's like. So I'm glad we got a chance to connect, man, and we're probably going to be end up doing a lot of other stuff together going forward, man.
Definitely, man. You need anything, you know, the studio's here for you, man.
Yo, check my man Ian out, Ian Bick on YouTube, Ian Bick on Instagram, Ian Bick on TikTok.
Yeah, everything. If you just go to ianbick.com, that's got everything.
ianbick.com. Y'all check him out. Ian, I appreciate you, kid.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Right, man. Peace.